In the name of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Please be seated. A few minutes ago, we joyfully processed into this space singing, and I thought we did a really good job. Singing all glory, laud, and honor to thee, Redeemer King. Waving our palm branches and joining with the whole enthusiastic crowd of Jesus followers as they shouted, "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord." Then their refrain, "Peace in heaven and glory in the highest heaven," which echoed the heavenly host who years earlier had proclaimed the Messiah's birth. How did we get from there to where we just were? Our voices joined again with the people's, this time shouting with blood-curdling urgency, "Crucify! Crucify him!" What happens in a few days between these two events that turns a crowd from acclaiming Jesus as their king into one demanding the death of this carpenter from Nazareth? Jesus' entry into Jerusalem had been a moment filled with possibility. Is he the one who will deliver us from the oppressive Romans? Is he really the Messiah, the one who will usher in God's new age, the one who will return all the Hebrew children to their promised land? Is he the one who will establish God's kingdom right here and right now? The answer, of course, to all these questions is yes. The problem isn't in the answer. The problem is in how you interpret these questions. Jesus is a king, the Son of God, the ruler of rulers. But he isn't a king in the ordinary worldly sense. He's the king for you and me, but he's also the king of the social outcasts and misfits, of the unlovable and unacceptable, of the sinful and the sick. He keeps company with tax collectors and fallen women and simple fishermen, with men who are blind and women who are possessed by demons, with those who are crippled and those who are afflicted with leprosy. He surrounds himself with a ragtag bunch of followers, the likes of which no king before or since has ever done. Not the sort of folks you would normally find with a king. To his followers, though, Jesus is a beacon of hope in their otherwise hopeless lives, a chance to once again believe that God is still with them in their loneliness and forgottenness, a chance to again believe that God continues to be faithful to them, that God will once again make good on his promise to give them a land flowing with milk and honey. So of course they welcome Jesus to the city of Jerusalem with sweet hosannas and joyful shouts, spreading their garments in front of him as they would for any beloved king. They don't see that the coming of God's kingdom isn't about their king leading a powerful army in order to save himself and them as well. They don't see that the coming of God's kingdom isn't about health and prosperity, that it's about serving others rather than waiting to be served. And so they turn on their king when his reality doesn't fit their expectations. They don't understand that their king is about allowing himself to be seized by the power of darkness in order to bring his Father's redemptive light into their lives. We all know this story. We know what's coming next, and yet we hear it unfold line by line, word by word, and the suspense and the dread mount. When we hear Jesus pray on the Mount of Olives, we feel his real humanity. He prays there's another way to fulfill God's plan in the gruesome, shameful death that lies before him, just like any of us would do. But unlike us, Jesus' devotion to his Father's purpose for his life is greater than his fear, and he's willing to do whatever he needs to in order to allow God's plan for redeeming humanity to unfold. And we wish it could be another way. We're then awed by his silence when he stands blindfolded and beaten, choosing to accept this punishment rather than deflect it with a showy trick, or better yet, retaliating violence, which is where I would go. He absorbs his abuse because of his love for both his Father and for us. And again, we wish it could be another way. We wish the story could play out with a different ending, but we find we cannot help ourselves from shouting with the others, "Crucify! Crucify him!" And we realize we have no power to prevent what's coming, or or to change its outcome. Over the years, fingers have been pointed in every direction. Who is really to blame for this travesty, this violent disregard for justice? Is it the disciple who betrays Jesus, or the one who vehemently denies 3 times he even knows him? Or is it all of the disciples who flee in terror because Jesus will not allow them to shed more blood in his defense? Or is it the leaders from the temple who are concerned with upholding their principles of their faith? Or maybe the Roman officials who need to quell any possible threat of insurrection, even that led by a carpenter who preaches a gospel of love? Where would I have stood in this drama? With Judas the betrayer? With Peter the denier? With the chief priests and scribes, or with Pilate? And where would you have stood? Would Jesus have been able to count on any of us to walk with him from the gates of Jerusalem to the Mount of Olives and finally to the place of the skull? Or would he have continued to walk alone? I invite you this week to walk with Jesus. As Father Keith suggested, come to church, but also read the gospel readings for this week, which basically is chapters 12 and 13 in the Gospel of John. Starting with Mary anointing Jesus in anticipation of his burial, which is the gospel story we heard last Sunday. Jesus cleansing the temple, the betrayal by Judas, the Last Supper, both the foot washing and the meal itself. And finally come here again on Good Friday for John's Passion narrative. Read them each day and walk with Jesus on his final journey as he goes from the blessed King who comes in the name of the Lord to the crucified King of the Jews. Walk with him as we move through the darkness of our sin, to then wait and watch with his friends and the women as he dies for the sins of the whole world. Then, as they do, return to your homes beating your breast and ponder your life as it would be if the power of darkness had forever conquered